Hello, friends, and welcome to Season 3 of Hops and Hedges, the podcast where we talk about beer, landscaping, and everything in between. I'm your host, Heather Gerard from My Landscape Artist, and I am so glad you're here. Hops and Hedges is proudly sponsored by ext.tech, and you're going to want to stick around until the end of the show for an exclusive discount code to use for their powerful CRM software and mobile app. Now crack open a cold one, and let's dig in. There we go. With me today, very close to the other London. So I'm coming to you from London, Ontario, Canada. And with me today, I have a special guest very close to London, UK, Dr. Bruno Cignacco. So welcome, Bruno, to the show. I'm looking forward to talking about your business, about your book, and about your TEDx talk. Very exciting.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invite. I feel very honored to be here.
Wonderful. And so for those tuning in who don't know you or your business, can you tell us about who you are and what you do and why are you amazing?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, I have been doing consultancy services, delivering consultancy services for nearly 30 years, and I have been delivering services related to international marketing and also lately in the last 7 years on compassionate business. I'm also a university professor here in the UK and also researcher and author of different books. My latest book is The Art of Compassionate Business, and well, I'm very pleased to be here.
Excellent. I'm also an instructor, so I'm not a professor. I don't have the doctor yet. Maybe one day at a local college here. I teach in the landscape design program. And so what is it that you teach?
Well, I'm specialized in international marketing, but I teach any module related to marketing. For over last few decades, I have been teaching modules such as customer behavior, international marketing, marketing and ethics, strategic marketing, basic marketing, foundation of marketing. So anything related to marketing is important to me, but also lately I'm very keen on ethical marketing. So how companies can serve customers, but at the same time being acting in a benevolent way, in an impactful way, so that they can get profit, they can get more sales, but also customers are much more satisfied. I would say delighted with company services and products.
Fascinating. And I before coming onto the podcast today, I did check out your TEDx talk. It's so cool that you got to do that. What a cool opportunity. Maybe that's something I can pick your brain about later. But I loved this idea of is there space for love in business? I do love, though, how you talked about love in a wider context. And you mentioned how a lot of people associate the word love with sentimental or romantic love. But there is this wide range of love and how this can really change our business. And the words you used were compassion, empathy, support, care, generosity, affection, and gratitude. There are absolutely space in business for that. Can you talk about this?
Yes, very important. Thank you for mentioning this. What I will say that the concept of love in business is not well used. You will see that in business generally you use what I call warmongering terms such as strategy, tactics, outpacing competitors, and this is not generally what I will call loving terminology or loving vocabulary, but I use the term love in a much broader way. Most people identify themselves with love when they're talking to partners, friends, relatives, but in my book, I'm talking about a much wider connotation of love, which include, for example, all these principles that you mentioned, generosity, gratitude, and it's a much more humanistic aspect of love, which apply not only to a close relationship, but also to business relationships. This concept of love is so important because it's based on few principles that I mentioned in my later research that are social reciprocity. Let's imagine that you are a company, you're leading a company, and you want to satisfy customers. The only way to build a relationship with this customer is developing win-win agreements where the company wins and the customer wins. Many companies in the marketplace, they're doing the opposite. They look for win-lose agreement. The company wins, gets a lot of profit, lot of market share, big sales, but customers don't feel satisfied. They feel in some cases deceived, they feel cheated on, they feel like manipulated. So the concept of love in business implies that you are building strong bonds with different stakeholders. Stakeholders are individuals and groups with interest in our organization, internal stakeholders, employees and management, and external stakeholders such as customers, suppliers, community members. And why you build these strong relationships with customers and employees and community members and so on? Because you understand that you cannot succeed without them. No company can succeed without customers, without employees, without community members, without suppliers, without business partners. So the only way for them to cooperate with your company is when you satisfy their needs, and at the same time they will be more prone to satisfy your own needs to make you achieve your own objective in a much more cooperative way. This is quite fundamental because in practice, if you read most of the business books, they talk about what I call the key performance indicators: profit, market share, productivity, quality levels. These are indicators that are quantitative. They can be measured precisely, they can be counted very precise way, and also they can be compared from year to year. Okay, next year we have a profit of 10 million, this year we have a profit of 12 million. We're doing better. You can compare from year to year.
Mm.
However, this is only a very tiny part of the business activities because in practice, these business activities are underpinned by relationships. So this means that the most important factor that will help you achieve all these key performance indicators are strong relationship with different stakeholders. Why? Because the most important need is to develop this robust relationship with stakeholders. And the most important resource in any type of business activity from companies across different sectors is the human being. Most people believe that the most important resource is technology or
Mm.
artificial intelligence or information or, for example, machinery, new technology. But this is not really important because the human being is the core brick of all this business model, the core foundation, because when you care for the human being, this human being, we call customers, employee, community members, suppliers, will care for your company, will help you achieve these indicators, profit, market share, but also the human being is a meta resource, is a resource that is above other resources. It's a resource that help you generate other resources. The human being can help you
Mm.
generate new technology, new services, innovative products, new business model, new way of interacting with customers and so on, new way of promoting the product or distributing the product. So this is fundamental. And there is another principle that I mentioned in my latest research that is the principle of reciprocity, social
Mm.
reciprocity. Interdependence and reciprocity, these are the two main principles that companies that are successful and human-oriented follow and try to keep always present in their business activity. Reciprocity implies that when you treat others in a kind way, they are more prone to respond accordingly in a similar way. When you treat, for example, customers in a disrespectful way, they are more prone to treat you in the same way, in a
Mhm.
disrespectful way. They will leave negative reviews, they will recommend other companies instead of your company, they will push other potential customers away from your company. Instead, when you treat them in a positive way, this means in a compassionate, kind, supportive way, not only customer, but any other stakeholder, this creates a positive cycle of reciprocity. This is quite obvious and common sense, but companies miss this simple point because they focus too much on this indicator, the quantitative aspect, market share, profit, productivity, and they forget that these indicators are always the natural result of strong, long-lasting relationship with these stakeholders, including customers, employees, suppliers. So the way of achieving success in business, not only from the economic perspective, but from the reputational perspective, means having a good brand image, good reputation, helping communities, building this robust relationship with stakeholders, is not only focusing on the key performance indicator, but it's much more indirect. You focus on building strong, long-lasting relationship with the stakeholders, what I call sustainable relationship. This means long-term relationship, not exchanges, not short-term exchanges, not one-off interaction. And when you build this robust relationship with stakeholders, they will help you achieve this key performance indicator. Who they? the stakeholders, customers, suppliers, will help your company achieve this key performance indicator almost effortlessly. Why? Because they will be very willing to cooperate with your company because you are creating a positive cycle of reciprocity. You are helping them and they're more prone to help you. You cannot force them to collaborate with your company, but
Mhm.
by satisfying their needs, they are more prone to be on your side. You don't want stakeholders against you. You want customers on the side of your company. You want employees cooperating with your company. You cannot force them, but building a strong relationship. What are a strong relationship? A strong relationship are bonds where both parties win. Nobody wins at the expense of others. The company wins, customer win. The company wins, employees win. The company wins, suppliers win. So everyone should be winning. And this model that is quite broad include not only, for example, companies, most companies have business mission or business purpose, which implies why are we in the marketplace? What is our purpose? What value we want to add? In this model that is a broader model that I call human-oriented model, you include not only in your business mission, your the economic aspect, how much you want to grow, or how much you want to develop your company with new product, new services, but also you include human aspect. What positive impact you want to bring about for the world, for people, how you want to improve their lives, how you want to add value to their lives through product, services, interaction, but also you include also in this business mission, a broader business mission, you include also environmental aspect. How do you want to affect the world, the ecology, the environment in a positive way? You want to use, for example, recyclable materials or eco packaging, or for example, green processes for producing goods. You want to produce a product that have organic ingredients that are very beneficial for the environment. So this means that it's a broader view of business which includes economic aspect, social impact, positive social impact, and positive environmental impact. This is quite fundamental because companies that meet these three levels in their business mission and in practice, they're more prone to have a positive reputation, a very good brand image and positive reputation, which implies that these companies are more likely to be portrayed by the media as an example to be emulated for companies in the sector, by companies in the sector, and by companies across sectors. But also, these companies with good reputation are more prone to be chosen by highly talented employees. Why? Because these highly talented employees don't want to work for a company only for their salary. They want to apply their skill, their talents, their
Mhm.
expertise on missions, business missions that are meaningful, that want to bring about a positive impact on the environment and the society as a whole. But also, these companies are more prone to be chosen companies with good reputation by high quality investors, because high quality investors, they don't look only for profitability or returns on investment, but they also look for bringing about what is called social investing, a positive impact on the world. So this means that being compassionate, being human oriented, being kind to stakeholders is not only being nice, will facilitate the relationship with them, but it's also about bringing positive impact on their lives and on the planet, and also creating this positive cycle of reciprocity. Value that you mentioned, like gratitude, compassion, empathy, care, and others, generosity, I call them qualitative aspect of business. They cannot
Mhm.
be measured very precisely like profit or market share, but they're fundamental for building robust relationship with stakeholders. And also they are in business, we call this principle or values timeless or perennial, can be applied today and can be applied in 20 years time, and they will be valid all the same. Why? Because
Mhm.
they are timeless. So this means generosity in business. There is a lot of research, and I mentioned in my book, that generosity begets generosity. When you are generous with customer, for example, these customers are generous with you with positive reviews, with recommending your product to other customer, potential customer, by being loyal, committed to your company, and always becoming ambassador for your company. Instead, when you are ungenerous and you're a bit stingy, self-centered, you don't give so much to this customer, only the basic, the minimum, this customer also try to behave in a much more conservative way. Won't help your
Right.
company so much, it won't leave very positive reviews.
So I actually want to talk to you a little bit about that because I think some other listeners might be also curious. So I'm coming from the landscape profession. So I'm a gardener, garden designer. I actually got to study garden history and design in Italy and Spain. So one day I will make it out to England, but England and France to see some more gardens. But I love this, what you're talking about, how the KPIs, right? People in business, we know what these are, and they are quantitative. And then you
Yes,
mention other aspects of social investment that are qualitative that aren't as easy to measure.
you
And
mentioned.
we really can't measure them, right? But what you can see is the turnover rate. So I don't know if if do you call it the same thing across the
Yeah,
pond there where you guys are?
yeah, yes, yes. I give
Right?
you an example of a study that I mentioned in my book that is a very famous study. And this study analyzes companies that the author called companies with a loving workplace. Loving workplace. More technically speaking, this will be can be called also psychologically safe workplaces. What are
Yes.
psychologically safe workplaces or loving workplaces are work environment where employees feel supported, they feel treated in a respectful way, their voices are heard. This means that they can give their own views without the fear of being ridiculed or left aside. But also, these employees work in a cooperative way with one another. They are not competing with colleagues. On the contrary, they trust each other, the colleagues trust each other, and also they can work jointly in a very collaborative way. These workplaces, we call psychologically safe workplaces or loving workplaces, are free from fear. Because what I observe here in the UK, but also in other parts of the world, that many workplaces have fear. These psychologically safe workplaces are void of fear, for the void of fear. For example, fear of employees being fired, or fear of making mistakes, or fear of being outpaced by colleagues, or fear of being assessed in a very harsh way by managers. Because they're free from fear, these workplaces, employees are less prone to become stressed when working or when receiving some, for example, feedback from a supervisor or manager, and these employees are more prone to develop a trust-based environment. In these workplaces, according to research, we call it loving or psychologically safe workplaces, employee turnover obviously goes down because employees want to remain in the company. They
Hmm.
feel pleasure to work for this company, not only for their salary, because they feel valued, they feel appreciated, they feel supported, they feel that they're making a positive contribution not only to the company but to the world through their work. But also in these workplaces, stress levels go down. And we know that when we are stressed, we cannot think clearly. Why? Because when you're stressed, you are more prone to adopt this freeze, fight, flight mode. This means
Mm.
that you're defensive, you feel threatened. In some cases, discerning skills are narrowed down to the threat at hand, less stress levels, lower stress level, but also these companies that are psychologically safe, with psychologically safe work environment, they have also lower absenteeism. This means that people want to go to work. Lower absenteeism will bring about more productivity, and also, these companies are more prone to develop projects that people cooperate with one another. This means that they are trust-based projects, trust-based workplace, and all these factors bring about higher employee satisfaction. This means that employees are more satisfied. How you can measure this? You cannot measure, but you can see this in the surveys. Employee survey will show that the employees feel positive emotions about this company. They like to be there. They feel that their work is meaningful. They feel that they count. They feel that they're appreciated. And also, because these employees are more satisfied, higher employee satisfaction, customers are also more satisfied. You can say, oh,
Mm.
how can this be? Because employees that are satisfied, they are happy, they are more feeling supported and treated in a compassionate way, they're more prone to do their best to meet customer needs. So this means that happy employees bring about happy customers. Unhappy employees bring about unhappy customers. So
Love that you say this because so many times I argue that things that can't be measured, you can, but you're not measuring them the way that we measure KPIs, right?
yeah,
So one of the examples that I've seen time and time again is a company will be complaining to their peers and their colleagues that they get a lot of complaints from their customers because the staff seem unprofessional. And then you talk to the guys that are on the ground, guys and girls that are on the ground, and they hate their jobs. You know, they're stressed out, they're miserable. So what they're doing is they are not enjoying themselves on a property. They are not being collaborative, right? There might be some, I don't know, but they're not enjoying themselves, right? And this is something that's really changed for me since having my own business is I will have a crew on somebody's property, their private property, installing a garden or doing a garden renovation. And gardens are very personal to people, right? These are their private spaces. And I've really let these people know, my staff, the contractors that I bring in, that we are privileged to be on this person's property. And if you don't want to be here, I'd rather you not be, right?
Very good.
But I get compliments from people saying, your guys, they're like laughing and they're doing jokes all day. And, I've got one crew that really likes to listen to music. And so the
Very good.
homeowners will be like, they're out there like dancing and putting in a patio. It's like, good, good, you
Yes.
know?
I like the attitude and I like the example because makes sense with all the research studies on this topic in a way that people do not have only economic needs. What you're talking about there, you're talking about other type of need that employees and any other stakeholder have. I want to classify the needs for any stakeholder in four groups. Most companies focus only on economic needs. This means, okay, we will pay a good salary. This means, and in some cases, it will be just the minimal wage. The minimum wage will be paid to comply with the law, adhere with the legislation. But this is not enough. The economic needs are only a tiny part of the any stakeholder needs. A very important need that you suggested implicitly was emotional needs. So this means that employees, like any other stakeholder, customer, supplier, have emotional needs. What they need? They need to feel supported. They need to feel appreciated. How you do this in practice? With a very simple example. Well, when employees collaborated and work over time, for example, to meet some deadlines and work very hard, you don't have to take them for granted. Most companies that are compassionate, what they do is, for example, they write a personalized thank you letter. In some cases, they give a gift to this employee. In some cases, they give a bonus for their performance. In some cases, they have an event where employees are publicly recognized. For example, it could be a dinner where the company will give some awards to this employee. This is quite important because emotional needs are as important as economic needs. This means that we need to feel taken care of, appreciated, supported. And if you focus only on the economic aspect, you're forgetting the human side, the emotional side. And employees, like any other stakeholder, we are emotional human beings, which
Hmm.
implies that we cannot leave our emotional side. If the employee doesn't feel recognized, even when they have a good salary, this employee is more prone to leave the company.
Right.
Another way to highlighting this employee emotional need is connecting their tasks, what they do on a daily basis, with the big purpose. This means, okay, you know what? Let's talk about the gardening example. Supposing that you are undertaking a gardening project and it's very personalized, tailor-made for this customer. Well, by having a continual exchanges with employees or contractors, you have to highlight how their specific task will contribute to the whole picture, to a beautiful garden at the end. So this means that each of them will be a necessary piece of the puzzle to get the final positive result.
Hmm.
So this means that you have to connect their individual task with the big picture, the vision or the outcome at the end, so that they can feel that they count. Because when people feel that they're not counting, they're not appreciated, they're more prone to be demotivated. Instead,
Yeah.
when you show them this is your task A, it's a part of the project, but will contribute significantly to the final outcome. This is quite important. It's quite simple to implement. But I mentioned economic needs, emotional needs, employees, like any other stakeholder, have mental needs too. This means need for novelty. This is quite important for motivation because employees that are doing always exactly the same task in a repetitive way, they're more prone to become bored, demotivated. How you can satisfy these mental needs? Coaching, mentoring, training, allowing employees to participate in different projects. In
Hmm.
some cases, employees might participate in different areas of the company too, to know more about the area. For example, we call job rotation, when employees can work. For example, in the production department, one week they can work in the marketing department, another week they can work in the administrative department. They have a much more holistic view of the company. And the last set of needs is social needs. Employees need to feel that they are connecting to others at work and outside work. What most companies do in practice? Well, they develop collective projects where employees can complement their skill with one another. I can imagine that in gardening will be very common. Someone will be dealing with some part of the gardening task, but the other will be dealing with other parts of the task. And so
Mhm.
there will be specialization and supporting each other. This meet the social need. But in some cases, company go one step beyond. What they organize once a week or once every 15 days social events outside work where employees can connect to one another uh, and talk about non-work topics, no business topic. This means that they can know each other on a much more personal level. Research has corroborated the fact that when you have these social events outside work on a regular basis, not once a year, for example, for Christmas, but when you have on a regular basis, this employee come back to work in a much more revitalized and energized way, and they're more prone to cooperate and support each other in a meaningful way.
So I have a
So
question
if you
about this. You were talking about social events happening on a regular basis to,
yes,
increase morale. So just a question for you. So what would be um, some reasons for staff members not attending these events or not being
yeah, but no, if
engaged?
you no, I think that there will be only few staff members that want to attend this if you explain the reasons of this type of events. You don't put this as an additional chore because in many cases people feel already overwhelmed by many chores when they're working at work. But
Mhm.
the purpose of I give an example of a company here in the UK that are organizing this event. This company employees work from Monday to Friday. After work, the last day of the week, the last working day of the week, Friday, they meet in a pub when they can have some dinner and they can have some beers or soft drinks. And the CEO will talk to the person that is in charge of the customer service department. So this means that there are no hierarchies. The most important objective of this meeting that the employees should be informed of is to strengthen the bonds between different
Yeah.
employees at
I
a
couldn't I
personal
couldn't
level.
agree with you more. I think
Yeah.
maybe what I was getting at is I've seen companies where again the higher up they're saying why are my staff members they're not coming to the pub. We invite them to the pub and they don't come. What the heck? And I
Well,
think that is showing something about the business,
yeah. Well, because
right?
at the end, what happened in these cases could be that people believe that working for the company is only about talking about a business topic, but this type of events foster much more meaningful conversation because at the
Right.
end, this type of event show you that employees is only being employed for this company, working for this company, is only a very tiny part of their human beingness.
It's not their
People,
life. They're not
they're not their
living to
life.
work. They're working to live.
Exactly.
So what
Exactly.
might be some reasons why staff members might not be engaged
Maybe because they are
in
not a
their work?
customer, because they haven't seen any example of from previous companies, because these are the minority of companies that are organizing this event. The majority, what happened? Purpose
Sorry,
of
I was changing the subject. So not for social events, but for everyday. Like in their everyday job, what might be some reasons that employees aren't very, enthusiastic about their job or engaged about their job? You know, I like staff members who are excited to come to work and who want to learn and who want to improve their craft. But sometimes you have employees who don't want to.
Yes, well, there are many reasons. There are many reasons. First off, maybe their personal values are not aligned with the company's values. So this
That's
is
what
quite
I was
important.
looking for.
Okay, because what happened? The company's values are what the company stands for, what is important for them, and the values drive all business decisions for this company. I mentioned in my latest research an example of a company that is Suppos, that is a company that sells shoes online. And this company, when employees are hired, they have a basic training where employees are informed and trained on the company's values. After this few weeks training, employees have to decide if they will remain with the company or not. The only criterion that will be taken into account by these employees is, are my personal values aligned with the company's value? The company will pay employees to leave the company if they feel that their values are not aligned. So this means this is an exception in the marketplace. So this means that if suppose believe that these employees' personal values are not aligned with the company's values, this employee will be paid to leave. So this means because this company doesn't want any employee working against the company. They
I
want
love that.
everyone to go. So this is quite interesting because at the end values are key and the most important motivator. But also another example that it can get employees demotivated is busyness, multitasking, micromanaging. I can analyze briefly each of them. Busyness. I see examples here in the UK of companies that have 8 meetings a day, every single
Oh
day.
my god.
How you expect you to work on side project? How you expect them to this employee to check their emails or even go to the bathroom? So this means have meeting after meeting after meeting, and most of the meetings are useless. They are not of value at all. Busyness get employees very stressed. They are more prone to burnout. Not good. Do we give enough time for employee to have a break during lunch and have some conversation with colleagues about non-business topic or not? We're continually cramming them with a lot of activity, but also multitasking. Employees are asked to meet unreasonable deadlines, many tasks at the same time, many projects that are simultaneous. Employees are prone to be stressed and get this fight, flight, freeze mode and get
Mhm.
defensive, get less cooperative, let's get productive, less creative, not good. But also, in many cases, as I mentioned, companies infuse fear in the workplace. What is the most important example of fear-driven activity that you see or aspect that you see in the workplace? Micromanaging. When you micromanage, you are the one micromanaging is fearful of other people, the one that are
Mm.
micromanaged, or making mistakes, or not being responsible, or making a lot of errors. Micromanaging is treating adult people like naughty children. This is
Mm.
not good. This cannot bring about trust. This cannot bring about cooperation, mutual cooperation, because people feel that they're not being trusted. And so when you're not being trusted, you feel that you're not being trusted, what do you expect them? To cooperate? No, this employee won't cooperate. Instead, companies that are not fear-driven tend to delegate. They will give employees general guidelines on how to act, and then they will trust this employee expertise, experience, qualification, capability, so that this employee will choose how to execute the task, when to execute the task, and the tool that they have to use. So this means that you are trusting them. Delegation implies trusting them. If not, why you hire people if you don't trust?
Exactly.
So it doesn't make any sense. But you see lot of fear in micromanaging, and also you see a lot of that also demotivate the employee, lot of non-constructive feedback. Let's imagine that the manager is giving feedback to this employee during employee appraisal. Means generally once a semester or one every 3 months. And then this manager, instead of focusing on the potential of this employee, how they can improve in the future, they're focusing only on the negative aspect, the mistake that they made, the error that they made, failure of achieving these objectives or deadlines. Well, if you focus exclusively on the negative aspect, means the past, the mistake that they made, this employee is more prone to become defensive. Instead, what I call compassionate feedback? Compassionate feedback reward all these mistakes as opportunities to improve your performance. So this means
Mm.
that when you're the manager and you're providing with constructive feedback, you're highlighting these errors or mistakes in the past as very important stepping stones to improve. And you will say, you know what, instead of saying, "Oh, you didn't meet the objectives for our last term," you will say, "We're very confident that you're more prone to achieve this objective for the future term. And we will give you a lot of tools for you to do so." For example, you try to offer them coach or mentoring or training, and you're very confident that they will do so. So because when you have, there is an interesting effect that I mentioned also in the book that is called Pygmalion or Pygmalion effect. That is, when you have positive expectation about others,
Mm.
this means that you believe that they're capable of improving their performance, you are more prone to treat them in a way that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So this means that you treat them as if they were competent, as if they were productive, as they can improve their performance. And so this creates a positive loop.
I love this effect, the Pygmalion effect, because that is
Yeah,
something also that we see in the education world.
yeah,
Teachers with their
yeah,
students. If you come
yeah,
into class and you think, oh, Billy is stupid, then you will teach him assuming that he's stupid. But if you
But
come in and you think these kids are brilliant,
yeah,
you know what? You are going to have, right? And it's the same thing with employees, managers with employees. A couple things you said earlier that I just want to make sure we don't lose. I love when you were talking about the social interactions, like having barbecues or going to the pub, and how the owners and the managers will sit at a desk or a table and have a beer with the frontline
yeah,
workers, right? And that's something that I think is so important. There seems to be a lot of companies organizing these social activities for their staff, but then they don't attend. So they
very
attend
important.
all these, they plan all these barbecues and they plan all these dinners and they plan the Christmas party, and then all the owners and the managers sit at a table with each other and they don't take the time to get to know their people. Like
Very
that's
important.
missed opportunity.
Yes, it's opportunity, and I want to highlight what is the science behind this. When people connect to one another beyond the hierarchy or the role in their company, regardless that they're the CEO or regardless that they're the one interacting with customer or the one cleaning the bathroom, regardless of their role, they connect to one another based on commonalities. This means what they have in common. And what are these
Mhm.
commonalities? That they're all human beings, regardless of the roles, the work roles. They're all human beings. They have fears, they have family members, they have expectations, they have bad experiences, positive experiences, they have dream and aspiration and for his project for the future, not only on a work level, but also on a personal level. In some cases, they
Mhm.
might have some health challenges. When you connect based on commonalities, psychologists observe that you are more prone to build stronger bonds instead of focusing on differences because roles what are there are differences. Some will have more power in the company, some will have less power, some will have more resources, some will have more decision making power, and so on. Instead, when you focus on the human beingness or the human side of this relationship, people feel more at ease. Not
Mhm.
they're not kind of pigeonholed to their role because the
Right.
role is only a tiny part of their life. Talk about the bigger aspect of their life. This means emotions, thoughts, opinion, negative experiences, fears, positive experiences, dreams, and aspirations.
I couldn't agree more. I think the magic happens when we stop focusing on the things that make us different.
Totally, totally.
You know, we're all humans, we're all on the same planet. We all need to stay hydrated. We all need to look after our fitness and eat well and hopefully be able to provide for our families. And hopefully we have dreams and passions, right? Like there's so much. That's where the magic is. So we have a couple more minutes here. So I want to make sure that we get to a couple more things. On your pre-interview questionnaire, you mentioned you've personally experienced the positive effects of meditation and walking in nature. Can we talk
Very
about
important.
that? So what type
Very
of practice do you have?
Well, I practice transcendental meditation, 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes at night. This is very calming. I have been doing for 3 years. I did in the past other type of meditation, but this is what worked for me because a very clear routine and you have a little mantra, optional mantra. This calm me down. I do at the beginning of the day. Why? Because in practice, when I do so, I'm more prone to begin the day in a non-stress way. So this means
Mm,
that this lower your stress level, especially when you have a very long day ahead. You are calming yourself down and you're more prone to be relaxed, calm. And when you're calm and relaxed, even when you have difficulties or challenges or you navigate difficult circumstances, you're more prone to enhance and harness your discerning skill and your creative skills. So I do this on a regular basis because this calms me down and also this also there are a lot of research studies on meditation, and meditation also when people are more calm, they're more prone to receive this intuitive insight. Some will
mm,
call in non-traditional ideas. Why? Because the subconscious mind, when people are settled, they're calmer, they're more relaxed, tend to incubate and also generate this intuitive insight. And this happened in my practice, professional practice, but also in my academic research. Many of the ideas that we're discussing today came out of meditation in a way
mm,
that different way of approaching traditional topics. So this is quite important. And contact with nature, I mentioned in the book too, the importance of, and some companies that are taking people to natural places. For example, here is a company called Puka Teas that this is a company that produce organic tea in different flavors. And in some cases, this company have taken employees to natural spaces on, for example, forests or There is an interesting set of forests and parks here in the UK. And why is so important? Because when you're in contact with nature, you're more prone to become calmer. You don't have the noise of the cars passing by, or you don't have the mobile phone unless you take to the forest or the natural place. And we call these states soft fascination. You are more prone to pay attention to the
Hmm.
environment, natural environment, and also you are more prone to experience states of awe, and also more prone to see the interconnectedness of the natural place. The trees, the birds, the plants, and so on, a lake, for example. So this means that this tend to calm you down. And also, there also, when you visit natural places, your blood pressure goes down too, the stress level goes down naturally because you are immersed, providing that you're not checking your mobile when you're
Yeah.
walking through the. But this is quite important, and this some company like the one I mentioned, Pukati, take employees also to not only to have meaningful conversation, but also to reflect in a much calmer way on the company's value and how this employee can add more value to the company's activities, but also talking about other non-business topics. So I feel that it's a very easy way to become in contact with the primal, with the basic, the foundation, and our prehistoric ancestors have been in contact with nature. So this is part of our DNA. Most people like to be in contact with nature because it calms them down. They also they can appreciate their beauty. They are not rushed. They take their time to see different aspects of the natural place. I personally like parks and I like the mountain too, but this is a matter of preference. Moreover, there is an interesting research study that the employee having a picture of a natural place in their workplace lower their stress level. So only a picture.
Yeah.
Imagine if you go to the real place. So this is quite wonderful. And I have a quota of nature per week. I have to go to a new park every week. And because you have so many here in the UK, I have been doing this before COVID. And so I keep on doing this because every park, if you like park or forest, has its own personality, its own beauty, its own design, and I love it. And also
Okay.
go to gardens. You have a lot of Victorian gardens here in the UK, so all gardens that are beautiful too.
Nice. Well, if you run out of parks in London, UK, you can come to London, Canada, and see our parks here.
They're good parks, are they?
Not bad. Yeah.
Okay, good,
Probably.
good,
I
good.
don't know. I haven't been to the parks in the UK, but
Okay,
you come to London, Ontario, and I'll give you a tour.
okay. Well, thank you very much. I will take the
Perfect.
offer.
So, before we let you go, I understand you have the second edition of your book. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about your
Okay.
book.
Well, the book is titled The Art of Compassionate Business, and it was published by Routledge 2 years ago. What is different from the first edition and the second edition? That this second edition has hundreds of examples of companies that are profitable, productive, creative, and human-oriented. And some of the topics that are mentioned in the book and analyzed in the book is science-based. So this means that a lot of research study and real example of company. Some example of the topic that you will find in this book is, for example, the importance of love in the workplace. How you can infuse more love instead of fear in the workplace, but also how you develop a much more compassionate customer service. How you can serve customer with an attitude of service instead of an attitude of selling your products.
Hmm.
And also, I mentioned some aspect also the positive impact on society of business activity and positive environmental impact. Also, there are also some chapter about meaningful conversation at work, which include not only business topic, non-business topic, personal issues
Right.
like health and so on. And there are many other topics that are mentioned in the book. The book is quite complete and overarching in a way that include different topics that are most of them they're not mentioned or analyzed in most classic business books.
Awesome. Well, I will be looking that up. You said it is published by Routledge?
Routledge, yes, and can be found in any bookshop, online or offline. So this is one of the 4 publishers worldwide that have a very widespread distribution. So can be found anywhere in the world, offline or online, and it's quite insightful in a way that also I added a few new topics. Compassionate leadership. How can leader become more human oriented? What is the
Hmm.
difference between a traditional leader that in many cases could be non-democratic or could be in some cases authoritarian, and a compassionate leader which It's open to views, different views. It's open to discussion. Also, it's open to recognize blind spots and so on. These are few
Right.
topics that are mentioned there in the book.
Very cool. So the very last thing before I let you go is on the questionnaire, I had asked if you had a joke that you wanted to share. Do you remember what joke you sent?
Well, the joke, I'm not very comical, but I will say that I forgot the joke. Sorry.
It's okay. That's okay. You wrote it down so I can remember it for you.
Can you please, can you remind me? Can you please?
So the joke that you said was always trust a glue salesman because they tend to stick to their word.
This was a good joke. Thank you for reminding me. But generally, I'm not very good at joke. But yes, this is the one that I like. Thank you for the reminder.
That is a good one. Are you a dad or are you just really good at dad jokes?
Well, yes, I'm not very good at jokes, but I try to improve my comical aspect. But
Very nice.
I try to develop this side.
Well, thank you so much. Coming all the way from the UK, I know it's getting pretty late there. It's 6:30 here. I think it's like 11:30 there in the UK.
Yeah, but it's
Yeah,
okay. It's okay.
it's
Thank you
okay.
very much.
Okay, well, thank you so much. You can find Bruno at his website, brunocignacco.com. We will have links and I'll be sure to tag you on all of our social media. So, Bruno, thanks again for coming on the show and I will see you around.
Thank you very much. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you.
Cheers. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Hops and Hedges, hosted by me, Heather Gerard of My Landscape Artist. Now, before you go, here's a quick word from our sponsor, ext.tech. In today's fast-paced world, landscaping businesses need modern tools to keep up with constant change, and that's where EXT comes in. EXT is transforming how landscaping, snow removal, and construction companies manage their operations. Using streamlined client management, real-time financial insights, and a modern mobile app your team will actually enjoy using. And with flat-rate pricing, there are no surprises, just clarity and control. If you're ready to revolutionize and grow your landscaping business, visit ext.tech to learn more. For additional savings, use the code HOPS10 at checkout, or just tell them that Heather sent you.